the enigma of Satoshi Nakamoto, it won't quit, will it?
Not at all.
Here we are, well over a decade since Bitcoin kind of burst onto the scene, and the question, who created this whole digital revolution, it still hangs in the air, sparks endless theories, a lot of intrigue.
It's really quite remarkable. I mean, in the world of major innovations, especially finance tech, you almost always have a face, a founder, a team.
Yeah.
Satoshi's absence, it just creates this unique and really compelling element to the whole Bitcoin story.
And that's exactly what we're diving into today. We've pulled together, well, a pretty fascinating mix of sources.
Okay.
Everything from the latest news articles buzzing with potential clues, Satoshi's original white paper itself laying out the groundwork, and even the Wikipedia entry to give us that solid overview.
That's a good set. Yeah, lets us trace the initial vision, how the mystery started, and the people who've kind of been pulled into its orbit over the years.
Right. So, our mission today, sift through all the speculation, get to the heart of the, let's say, leading theories about who Satoshi is. We'll look at the evidence, what keeps these ideas alive, and hopefully give you a much clearer picture of this puzzle without getting totally lost in the technical jargon.
That's good.
Okay, so where does this whole fascinating mystery even begin?
Well, it all really goes back to the Bitcoin white paper, published in 2008 by the pseudonymous Satoshi Nakamoto on bitcoin.org.
Right, the foundational document.
Exactly. And the core idea, left out right there in the abstract, was to create a purely peer-to-peer electronic cash system.
So person-to-person payments online.
Precisely. Allowing payments to go directly, one person to another, cutting out the middleman, the banks, the financial institutions.
Solving that double spending problem.
Yes, that was key.
Yeah.
Solving that long-standing challenge for digital currencies.
A pretty bold idea, really, taking aim right at the foundations of how we handle money.
Definitely. And then January 2009, the software goes live, and that first block, the Genesis block, gets mined. And there's that famous detail embedded right in it, isn't there? Something people point to as a potential clue.
Oh, yeah, the newspaper headline.
Exactly. Inscribed right in that first block. The headline from the Times of London, January 3rd, 2009. Chancellor on brink of second bailout for banks.
Wow.
It's widely seen as both a timestamp, confirming when it was mined, and maybe a bit of commentary from Satoshi.
On the state of the banks back then.
Possibly. On the perceived fragility, perhaps, of the system Bitcoin was meant to be an alternative to. It's a powerful little detail. People have analyzed it endlessly for insights into Satoshi's thinking, maybe even where they were based.
Seems very deliberate. And Satoshi didn't just drop the white paper and run, right? They were active for a while.
Oh, yeah, very much so. Active in development discussions, community chats, guiding things, until around December 2010.
Okay.
After that, their direct involvement started to fade. Then came that final known email in April 2011, and then, well, they essentially vanished from public view.
Which, naturally, just cranked up the mystery factor even more.
Absolutely. The sudden departure just intensified all the questions about who they were.
Leading, of course, to this huge ongoing effort to unmask them. Or maybe it's a group of them. We've seen quite a few names thrown around, some more plausible than others.
Precisely. Early on, there were some, well, high-profile mistakes, like Dorian Nakamoto.
Oh, I remember that. The guy in California.
That's him. Japanese-American gentleman, totally wrongly identified, media frenzy, the whole thing. He had to come out very strongly, denying any connection.
Yeah, that must have been rough. Shows how hard this is.
It really does. Highlights the difficulty, the potential for just getting it completely wrong.
And then we have the much more recent and, let's say, contentious situation with Craig Wright, who very publicly, repeatedly claimed he was Satoshi.
Ah, yes, Craig Wright.
Yeah.
His claims led to a lot of legal action, most notably that lawsuit from COPA, the Crypto Open Patent Alliance.
Right, trying to sell it once and for all.
That was the goal, establish definitively that Wright was not Satoshi Nakamoto.
And the court's decision back in March 2024, pretty clear-cut, wasn't it?
Extremely clear-cut, a definitive ruling. The court concluded Craig Wright is not the author of the white paper, not the person using the Satoshi pseudonym from 08 to 11, not the creator of Bitcoin, not the author of the early software, full stop.
And the evidence cited.
Strong suggestions of forged documents, a pattern of untruthfulness to the court. He was even sentenced for contempt of court later in December 2024 in a related case.
Okay, so it seems like that particular chapter is pretty firmly closed.
It appears so.
So with those prominent figures like Dorian Nakamoto and Craig Wright largely ruled out. Who are some of the names that keep coming up? The ones still seen as, well, maybe the most likely candidates?
There are definitely a few recurring names. One of the big ones, especially if you look at something like the polymarket prediction markets, is Nick Szabo.
Nick Szabo, okay.
As of October 2024, he was given, a fairly significant probability, around 16.6% related to that HBO documentary, actually, of being Satoshi.
Okay, so for listeners who might not know, who is Nick Szabo and what makes him a compelling possibility?
Szabo is a highly respected computer scientist, cryptographer, and crucially, before Bitcoin, he came up with something called BitGold.
BitGold, right.
Now, BitGold never fully launched as a currency, but its design. It had so many of the core ideas we later saw in Bitcoin.
Like what?
Things like a peer-to-peer network, using proof of work to stop double spending, heavy use of cryptography. The conceptual overlap between BitGold and Bitcoin is pretty striking. Suggests a kind of intellectual link, potentially.
And wasn't there some interesting timing with his blog posts about BitGold?
Yes, that's part of the speculation.
Yeah.
Apparently, he deleted blog posts about BitGold back in 2005, then reposted them in 2008.
Right around when the Bitcoin paper dropped.
Exactly. Now, some archival evidence suggests the original posts were from late 2005, but having these very similar ideas reappear right before Bitcoin launched, it definitely made some people raise their eyebrows. What does that suggest about the timeline?
And even Elon Musk chimed in on Szabo, didn't he? Never one to hold back an opinion.
He did, yeah. Musk has publicly said he thinks Szabo was likely Satoshi. That was partly fueled by an old interview clip.
Oh, the alleged slip-up.
Right, where Szabo seemed to say something like, when I was building Bitcoin. Now, it could easily have just been, an awkward phrasing, a slip of the tongue.
Sure.
But it definitely added more fuel to that particular fire. It is really important to stress, though, Nick Szabo himself has consistently, flatly denied being Satoshi Nakamoto every time he's asked.
Okay, important point. Another name that comes up a lot, and one with a particularly poignant connection to when Satoshi disappeared, is Len Sassaman.
Ah, Len Sassaman, yes. A highly regarded figure in the cypherpunk movement.
Cypherpunk's focused on privacy, cryptography, right?
Exactly. A group passionate about using crypto for privacy, freedom, decentralized tech. Sassaman worked heavily on things like PGP, remailers tools that share some of the core philosophy behind Bitcoin, decentralization, anonymity.
And he worked closely with another key early Bitcoin figure.
He did. Len Sassaman worked very closely with Hal Finney at Network Associates.
Hal Finney, the first person to ever receive a Bitcoin transaction from Satoshi.
The very same. Finney was crucial in the early days. That close association between Sassaman and Finney has led some to wonder, could they have worked on Bitcoin together?
Now, the theory connecting Sassaman specifically to Satoshi got a boost around 2021, right? What was the thinking there?
Yeah, that theory, notably pushed by researcher Evan Leung Hatch, pointed to a few things. Possible similarities in writing style between Sassaman and Satoshi.
Okay.
Also, that UK-centric headline in the Genesis block. Sassaman was American, but apparently he sometimes used British English phrasing in his writing. Some saw that as mirroring Satoshi's style.
Interesting. And then there's the timing of his death.
Yes, that's the really striking part. Tragically, Len Sassaman passed away in July 2011.
Just a few months after Satoshi's last known message in April 2011.
Exactly. That close timing naturally led many to speculate about a connection. Could his death explain Satoshi's disappearance?
But there's always a but in this story.
A very significant but. His wife, Meredith L. Patterson, has strongly and repeatedly denied it. She's been very clear. Len was not Satoshi.
What reasons did she give?
She pointed out practical things like Len primarily used Mac OS while Bitcoin was initially developed on Linux. She also noted that HBO didn't even contact her for their documentary. And importantly, the documentary maker himself, Colin Hoback, claims he confronted the real Satoshi later, which, if true, obviously rules out Sassaman. So while the timing is a really uncanny coincidence, the direct evidence just isn't there, and it's contradicted by those who knew him best.
Absolutely crucial context. Okay, what about Hal Finney himself? Given he was right there at the beginning, received the first transaction, surely he was a suspect.
Oh, absolutely. Hal Finney comes up constantly, and for very good reason. As we said, crypto pioneer, first recipient of Bitcoin from Satoshi. He made huge contributions early on.
And he developed that reusable proof of work idea.
He did, yes. A concept many think influenced Bitcoin's own proof-of-work system. His fingerprints are all over the early days.
Yet, despite all that, he always said it wasn't him.
He did. Consistently, unequivocally, denied being Satoshi Nakamoto, right up until he sadly passed away from ALS in 2014. His contributions were immense, no doubt, but concrete proof linking him as Satoshi never materialized.
Okay. Another big name often mentioned, especially because of his work on a key underlying technology, is Adam Back,
Adam Back, yes, inventor of Hashcash.
which is cited in the Bitcoin white paper itself.
Exactly. Hashcash is a proof-of-work system, a precursor concept. Back is also the founder of Blockstream, a major Bitcoin tech company. And significantly, he was one of the very first people Satoshi communicated with directly during Bitcoin's development.
So the connection to the tech, the early days, it's definitely there. What's his stance on being Satoshi?
Like the others, Adam Back has repeatedly publicly denied it. As recently as October 8th, 2024, he denied it again. Interestingly, he actually argues that Satoshi staying anonymous is good for Bitcoin. He compares it to gold. Gold doesn't have a known founder, right?
That's a fascinating point.
His view is that the focus should be on the technology itself, its properties, not on the person or people behind it. Let it stand on its own.
Takes the personality cult aspect out of it, maybe.
Precisely. Shifts the focus. Now, speaking of things reigniting the speculation, that HBO documentary, Money Electric, The Bitcoin Mystery, which came out October 2024, it put forward a pretty specific and, frankly, surprising new theory, didn't it?
It certainly did. Caused quite a stir. The documentary by Cullen Hoback pointed the finger at Peter Todd.
Peter Todd, a former Bitcoin developer. Yeah, that claim definitely got the crypto community talking. A lot.
What was the reasoning? How did Hoback connect the dots to Peter Todd in the film?
Well, the argument seemed to hinge on a few things. One was a chat message from Todd, sent shortly after one of Satoshi's last known posts, focusing on a technical detail. Another point was Todd's use of Canadian English. The documentary suggested this matched linguistic patterns in some of Satoshi's writings.
Canadian English? That seems specific.
It does. And finally, there was a somewhat cryptic chat post from Todd about sacrificing Bitcoins. Hoback interpreted this as maybe a veiled hint that Todd had lost or destroyed access to Satoshi's massive Bitcoin stash.
But Todd was actually in the film, and he pushed back hard.
Oh, absolutely. Todd himself vehemently denied the whole theory, called it ludicrous, said Hoback was grasping at straws.
Strong words.
Yeah, he was pretty critical of the director's methods, too, even accusing him of using QAnon-style coincidence-based conspiracy thinking.
Wow, okay.
It really just underscores how speculative this whole search can be. Theories built on circumstantial clues, interpretation. It gets contentious fast.
It really does, and highlights how the mystery itself is almost part of the Bitcoin brand now. Let's circle back to Adam Back's point about anonymity maybe being a good thing. Our sources had some interesting takes on why staying hidden might actually be important for Bitcoin.
They did, yeah. Looking at the Bitcoin VN article, several compelling reasons pop up. A big one is just decentralization.
How so?
By staying unknown, Satoshi avoids becoming this central figurehead, right? A single point of control or failure. It helps keep Bitcoin decentralized in spirit, not just technically. Reinforces the idea that it's the system that matters, not one person's authority.
Makes sense. Keeps it trustless.
Exactly. Anonymity fits perfectly with Bitcoin's core idea. A trustless system. You don't need to trust Satoshi, you trust the code, the math. Plus, you could argue Satoshi's anonymity helped the community grow more organically. Without a single leader to rally around or, fight against, the focus stayed on the tech, its potential. It encouraged broader involvement from lots of different people.
Less drama, maybe. More focus on building.
Perhaps. And like Adam Back said with his digital gold analogy, no known founder helps cement its image as this neutral commodity, separate from any individual's baggage or agenda.
So the anonymity isn't necessarily a bug. It might actually be a feature, a strategic choice, almost.
Could well be. Intentionally or not, it's had that effect.
Okay, let's shift gears slightly. What about the money? The potential economic impact of all this secrecy? Our sources mention what could happen if Satoshi was revealed or if those early coins started moving.
Right, the Coin68 article brings this up. The big question revolves around that massive stash, estimated at around 1.1 million Bitcoin, believed to be sitting in Satoshi's original wallets.
Untouched since the early days.
Exactly. If Satoshi were identified, what happens to those coins? Are they accessible? If they suddenly became active, moved onto exchanges, that's a huge potential supply shock hitting the market. Could cause serious volatility.
Or the opposite.
Or the opposite. If it were somehow proven those coins are lost forever, permanently inaccessible. Maybe the keys were destroyed. Some analysts think that could actually boost the price. Why? Because it further reduces the total possible circulating supply, makes the remaining Bitcoin even scarcer.
And we saw a little taste of that anxiety recently, right? That whale wallet moving coins just before the HBO doc, reported by VN Express.
We did. Movement from a wallet dating back to the really early days, the so-called Satoshi era, before April 2011.
Yeah.
When that happens, especially right before a big documentary drops.
Speculation goes wild.
Instantly. Could it be Satoshi? Someone close to them? It just fuels the fire.
Oh.
And we're talking serious money. That specific move involved 11,169 Bitcoin, worth around 72.4 million US dollars back in October 2024.
Wow.
So yeah, any activity from those ancient wallets gets massive attention, keeps the mystery alive, keeps people watching those addresses very, very closely.
And it all loops back to that great quote from Satoshi that Fidelity Digital Assets highlighted once. It might make sense just to get some in case it catches on. If enough people think that way, that becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy.
That quote really captures it, doesn't it? That early, almost speculative belief.
Yeah, the grassroots idea.
The idea that collective belief, adoption itself, would make it valuable, and the ongoing obsession with Satoshi, with those dormant coins, it shows the market is still acutely aware of this huge silent influence sitting out there, this unknown entity.
So here we are. After exploring all this, the big question is still just hanging there, isn't it? Who is Satoshi Nakamoto?
It really is. Despite, countless theories, debunked claims like Craig Wright's, even a whole HBO documentary trying to crack it, the real identity. Still one of the biggest, most persistent mysteries of the digital age.
It's just a truly fascinating story. You've got this groundbreaking tech innovation wrapped up in this just compelling human enigma.
Absolutely. Bitcoin's creation wasn't just a technical feat, though it certainly was that. It's also a massive social, cultural phenomenon, and that phenomenon is tied inextricably to the creator staying anonymous.
Which brings us to our final thought for you, the listener, to chew on. Does Satoshi Nakamoto staying anonymous ultimately make Bitcoin stronger? Or does it weaken its fundamental principles somehow?
Yeah. What does this whole enduring mystery tell us about how we relate to technology now? About trust, identity, and this digital world we're building?
Definitely something to think about further. A lot of different angles to consider from everything we've discussed today.